This has been probably one of the most highly anticipated offerings or listings in a very long time. Almost every year that we would talk in Davos, I would invariably ask you, are you going to go public? Are you going to list? And invariably you wouldn't. So let's start with why now?
You know, over the years, we've been skeptical about listing, and for lots of reasons. We really needed to build our products with enough protection so that we would be ready to launch them into the public space. And we built out PG, which is our government product, and our Foundry product, and built a way to maintain them so that we wouldn't have to scale the number of people. And you know, we've reached a base where our company is very significant, and we believe being in the public space will help us with our clients and help us grow. And quite frankly, I believe the people at Palantir who've built this company over 17 years deserved access to liquidity. And so we decided this would be a great time for us, and so far it's been a really interesting process, and our clients are embracing it. So it's a really good time for us, and I'm very, very grateful.
17 years in, while you now may have an operating profit, the company unto itself is still not profitable. So walk us through what the path to profitability looks like.
Well, you know, we build these products years before people build them, and that takes money. And what you see in the COVID pandemic crisis is we had built this way of going to market with Foundry, which would allow us to literally supply an enterprise with a completely new stack of products within 6 hours and maintain them. And what you saw when we did that is we grew the company 49%. 49% off of a 743 base. And the divergence between expenses and growth is dramatic. And we're just going to be very, very focused on invigorating our software offering. But when you're growing 49% off of a 740 base, I think that's a pretty strong indication of what the future could hold. And we're super proud of that. And I think you're seeing that people are taking a look at our financials. And our company has often been viewed as complex and needing explanation, both moral and financial. But it turns out our financials are quite simple. And you look at this dramatic growth with flatlining expenses, and I think that gives investors comfort. And it certainly makes me feel, as co-founder and CEO, that we made the right decision to invest heavily well over a decade in building software the way other people don't build it, and you see the results. What I can tell you is we are very, very focused on building software a long time before other people building it, supplying it, and I think that our first half of the year growth will be reflective of the future. And if I'm right, that will answer all of your interesting questions, and we'll see how we do. I'm right. Quite confident we'll do well. I think what the investors are seeing is they're asking the question at this point. They used to ask, is this a company that builds software for the government, and how do they build it? Of course, we always sold this as a license. Then they saw our margins in the first half of the year around 80%. So I think the real debate now has moved significantly away from, is this software, is this services? Because although people think we're very smart, we're not smart enough to get 80% margins off of a services company. The question then is, how do you comp it? And honestly, I think that's something investors will have to figure out. We're not focused on that. We're focused on, we are going to be the most important software company in the world, and people will figure out what that's valued over a long period of time. And we're very comfortable with investors toying around. It could be like this, it could be like that. We are going to deliver the world's best software with the world's most efficient way of delivering it. Investors will decide what's that is worth to them. And I think you'll find in a number of years that there will be a consensus. Palantir is a truly special software company that is arguably the most important software company in the world.
Given the confidential nature of what you do you worry about being a public company?
The problem with being a public company is that it can be culturally corrosive on the inside.
And what do you mean by that?
If you look at Foundry, which is used to power the COVID crisis, or PG, which is powering most Intel services in the world, these products were built over the course of years, and they were derided. Barely anyone wanted to invest in us. We almost went out of business a number of times. And we didn't have somebody in Wall Street, quite frankly, who has no earthly clue what they're talking about, telling us, you can't build this because there's no product or no market for it. But when you're public, their view means a lot more, and it's harder to tell them, hey, look, I know this looks like something no one needs, but they'll need it in 10 years.
Not that many people, including those inside of Silicon Valley, know what it is. What is Palantir?
Well, in every large-scale enterprise, you essentially have this problem that you have data in different databases. Mm-hmm. and it's very hard for humans to actually interact with that data. And what we basically do is we promote human-driven synergies between humans and computers by integrating every data store you have, any kind of data, and at any scale. And we also provide privacy protection so that you only see the data you're allowed to see. Now, this sounds like an incredibly boring problem, but actually it's the core issue you have if you want to do things like prevent cyber attacks, enforce civil liberties, enforce standards of privacy on data, or in some of our work actually stop terror attacks.
The DNA, though, of Palantir is tied to PayPal. One of your co-founders is Peter Thiel. Can you talk about the beginning of the company, how you were able to grow this product from something that was created in PayPal?
So there are two key components to that. One, the methodology that was developed at PayPal, which was basically the use of human analysis to reduce fraud. So they had this massive problem of essentially cyber fraud and was putting them out of business. They tried algorithmic approaches, so you go and you get algorithms and you try to reduce the fraud by applying those algorithms to large data sets. One of the interesting things about that is it doesn't work out very well because the opponent is highly adaptive. You have an algorithm that finds this behavior, they figured it out, they change. What you need is a human mind that's adaptive against an adaptive enemy or an adaptive opponent. So having the human mind apply its own version of algorithms to data. And that actually was very, very powerful in reducing fraud. So since we knew that worked, we marched off kind of naively to the intelligence community and said, look, we'll build this into a product. Now, the key moment here is we didn't want to do this as a service. Mm-hmm. You could say we have a methodology, we'll build every time we sit down, we'll do this one, we'll do it each time and we'll charge you. But we had this idea that is run through our whole company that we will try to get this into a product, meaning that we would solve the underlying issues that would work in any enterprise. Now, what we found when we went to the intelligence community is, unlike PayPal, they had lots of unstructured data. The data stores were much larger. They weren't built to communicate. You had very, very technical users and non-technical users, and you had this massive issue of privacy protection and collaboration. So in the PayPal context, you allow any user to see all the data. But in the governmental or even consumer context, you can't allow end users to see every bit of data. They only get to see the subset they're allowed to see.
When was your aha moment when you felt like, okay, we have something that's scalable, that the government, that other private institutions are really going to want to use?
Well, of course, it was very scary since doing enterprise software 2005 to 2009 was a little bit like starting a circus.
Yeah.
In the middle of Palo Alto with engineers. It was not popular, or it was popular with the wrong people mainly, which was us and a couple investors like Peter, who was a co-founder, and so we didn't know it would actually work till 2008, and we didn't know anyone would buy it till really mid 2008, so third quarter 2008. And until then, we were just operating on the faith that we had something really important. Now, the real proof was we saw massive adoption without a sales force. So this is how we knew it was working, because one person would email another they have classified networks and say, this is awesome, you have to get that. And so one of the reasons to actually be very focused on an engineering team as opposed to a sales team is you really need to know, is the delta between what they have with us and what they could have really significant. The thing that resonated with them was we said, we are not selling you a service. We are not going to come and sell you engineers. We are going to sell you a finished product, and we are going to show you it, demonstrate its value against your data. If you are iterating on a problem that you want to be important 3 years from now, it's better to have engineers figuring out what the core issues are and then iterate against them. If you want to optimize on revenue next quarter or even in the next 9 months, you want to be heavy on Salesforce, long sales, short engineering. We're long on dealing with the most important problems that we can find, dealing with them in a productized way so that they scale for the client. And because we're long on that and short on what happens in the near term, we are not planning to hire salespeople. We still haven't hired any. We don't really hire non-technical people very often. And we don't have a marketing department, and we're not planning to get any of them.
So I want to start, Alex, when people think of Palantir, even probably you're in Silicon Valley, they have this idea of a very secretive startup that works hand in hand with the CIA, the FBI, helping to track down terrorists and criminals. But when you explain what Palantir does, how do you walk people through it?
Well, it's different in different parts of the business. We're now a very global company in the national security arena. We're probably the best known, most successful product, so people know us. and they know we're used for targeting and for data protection. And so people know our work in the context of the special forces, so finding bad people, integrating the data, allowing special operators to use the data in the field on their laptops to continue their mission. They know our work in the kind of national security context as finding networks that are hidden. They know our work in the illicit traffic networks, finding human traffickers, so more what the police and internal security would do. And actually, outside of America, we're very, very well known for complying to civil liberties norms and data protection norms. I tend to think we're more shy than secretive. We're not consumer internet. We stick very closely to our own business. But because of the breadth and depth of our work, we're in over 40 countries. On the clandestine side, it's much more like people know the results, and then they want to know why. And so what we sometimes have to explain is this is actually built on a data integration motor that is very specialized for very certain things. So in the national security context, we work hand in hand with most of the special operators in the Western world. We work hand in hand with most of the clandestine services, both external and internal in the Western world, especially in what's known as the Five Eyes, so the English-speaking countries that won World War II, and in Northern Europe, but also in many other countries. We're very well known for police work, and we're very well known for data protection. What we explain is, why does it actually work? And this has to do with our efforts. So we spent 3 years building an engine that will allow you to take any data in any source and integrate it in a way that's usable while applying rules to the data, so that the Secret Service person, the person in intelligence, person in special operator sees all the data they're allowed to see, none of the data that they're not allowed to see, which is very important because these things tend to be collaborative. So if you go into the field as a special operator, you're probably working also with special operators from Norway, from other NATO countries, from Britain, where you share a lot but not everything. And then when you go to the final mile and you're there, you need to know the data you're integrating actually works. And that engine, the engine that powers that, that's what we provide. On the commercial side, we spent years and years trying to develop a commercial product, and successfully built one recently, which largely allows people to integrate industrial data. It's very specialized for industrial use cases. Also allows you to do data protection, but the power of it comes from the ability to scale across an enterprise and make workers more valuable. So you have a problem when you're building any kind of motor or doing any kind of drilling. So we're well known in the industrial drilling context, in the flight context, in the automotive context, although we don't talk about that much publicly. But you have essentially a massive amount of data, but it's very hard to figure out or predict which part is likely to break under which conditions in a motor. And knowing that is the difference between making a lot of money, or much more money than your competitors, or much less money than your competitors, because the parts have different costs. So one part of a typical case in a plane or in a car would be one part costs 2 cents, one part costs $1,000. If you can predict that replacing the part that costs 2 cents every 2 months instead of 5 months saves you the $1,000, you have a massive market advantage and a safety advantage. But these things actually have to be done on the line as well. So you need a product that interfaces with everyone in the company, the CEO, the managers, but also the auto workers, that has an engine that can power that, and then a front end that they can work with intuitively. And the thing that's very special here, that I believe Silicon Valley is creating innovation without jobs, and it's really hurting our world. And what's very special about Foundry is that it creates innovation with jobs. So the factory worker, there's 1,500 people at Chrysler using our product, 1,500 people who are technical, but they're not PhDs in computer science or math. At Airbus, we have 5,000 workers using our product. Now, maybe I'm just going back to my old philosophical days, but what's made this company special is not that we're secretive. It's not that we're an enterprise software. It's that we've been very focused on fighting terrorism with data protection, and what we're recently now very focused on as well is innovation with jobs. Now, why should we care? Well, because if you don't have jobs, you're not going to have democracy. And I think, obviously we were born in Silicon Valley and we're of Silicon Valley in some ways, but this movement towards innovation with no jobs is really hurting our society. What's made our product successful is when we find a convergence between philosophical, moral, and technical things, and we bring it together. And that's actually been the secret of PG, or our government product. It wasn't about making money. sure, we're a business. We like making money. It was about how can we make sure the special operator comes home with legs. And that really is motivating. And so like on the commercial side, really finding something where workers can use the product. And once the worker starts using the product, they're like really valuable. Because the worker on the front line can begin to do something that heretofore that no worker could do. Actually, a computer alone can't do it because the computer, it's a factorial problem. Computers are not capable of actually doing this yet. Maybe they will be in 10 years, but by then the worker will be so good that maybe they're irreplaceable.
So your point, Alex, is that Silicon Valley tech companies should be doing more to promote job creation, and Palantir software is helping that effort?
Well, I mean, you're being diplomatic. I think they should do more to stop destroying jobs. And we're doing innovation with jobs. The West Coast of America is eating up every job on the planet. And that's a problem for our society. Now, maybe other companies don't want to be involved in that. That's their choice. Just like many companies don't want to be involved in stopping terrorists. That's their choice. Or protecting data. That's their choice. Our choice as a company is that we want to be involved in this, and we are driving really, really hard on this. And by the way, to your viewers, what's been very interesting is a famous saying in the Valley: ask for money, get advice; ask for advice, get money. You know, the more we focused on these deep philosophical issues, the more we've crushed it as a business.
And so the idea is that Palantir software is creating jobs at a Chrysler plant.
It's preserving jobs, because once the 1,500 employees are using the software, they're actually doing things that otherwise you'd need a PhD to do. And so you're making them as valuable as the PhD in software. And it scales across the enterprise, so they're more valuable than a single PhD in software, because what they figure out then scales across the enterprise. Once they figure out, okay, well, this part and this part interact in a weird way. If we change that, then everyone in the whole, and in fact, you see this at Airbus as well, where you have these 5,000 people and a myriad of airlines hitting this data stack, which allows them to lower costs and, quite frankly, obviously more important to most of us, increase safety. We only win big where we start from a moral thing. That's what actually motivates us, and that's what allows us to go deep enough on the tech thing to be disruptive. What's very interesting about our company is that once we moved everything on the Foundry platform and focused on industrials, and the central thing is we have to focus on moral things that we care about. And so when you look at our business, you know, the part of our business where we did this has grown 100% year on year for like 3 or 4 years. So, and part of getting these things right in the beginning when you're building a product, just like in the US government, took us years and years and years of experimenting with massive data sets. Quite frankly, I'm quite grateful to all the companies we got to experiment with. That's how we built Foundry. And now we have this massive product. It's quite interesting and it's quite important. And you know, the churn numbers on our government product are de minimis, meaning if you take out the ones where it was like some reason we wanted to leave for more, it's almost non-existent. But it happens in any big business. We're a large business. So, and some of that might be our fault. But what's interesting about the Foundry product is we're starting to see that same kind of thing, very sticky and very focused on industrial things and very focused on job creation, and then the workers and the corporate people become our allies.
Let me ask you, there's a lot of companies, Alex, you know, that are focused on big data, analytics, software, products and services. You know the names. It's Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, SAP. What do you think in that market? What's Palantir's competitive advantage?
Well, we're very focused on our own business, and we take that really seriously. We're primarily a creative organization, so that means we create. We try not to look at what the other people are doing, or obviously not overly. But the central difference is we go much deeper into the integration for moral reasons. Like, we are trying to do tech that saves lives and protects lives. So find terrorists, protect our civil liberties. We're trying to do tech and are doing tech that does innovation and does jobs. It's a completely different mandate than the companies you've listed, which are great companies. And then on the data integration side, quite frankly, I think, you know, people are very different. They're doing analytics, which is different than integration. We provide essentially the analytics stack for free. Most software comes in 2 flavors. It either doesn't work or it's not useful. Our software comes in the flavor of it's very useful, sometimes deadly. Because we've been quote unquote secretive, people always assume that we're different than what they expect, maybe sometimes positive, maybe sometimes negative. What they will be surprised at is how a creative company can create margins that are significantly better than what people normally say. Talk to the clients, look what we're doing, look at our track record for delivering. You know, it's interesting, we've been at this for a while, and we've had times where people are really overly excited and under really excited. There's a time where people are underestimating what what we're doing, and that time will be gone very quickly. And by the way, we wouldn't be where we are except for these these articles, because people make no effort to compete with us. You know why? Because they don't understand how well we're doing. We're stopping terrorism with data protection, and we're doing innovation with jobs. And you know what? You'll find that the lagging indicator value of that is much bigger than people realize, and they will find that out too.